very excited for the last piece of content tonight. Andrew's going to be in the far side, and we will have an AI join us.
We might, yeah.
Yeah, which will be the first time, so hopefully that goes well. But Andrew, before we get Borty involved, I want to take you a bit through your journey. So I think I first met you, must have been 15, 16 years ago at McKinsey.
Long time ago, yeah.
Long time ago. I wish I was an analyst, because the analyst class seems to have just kicked ass. But if I were to ask you McKinsey, do you think you'll be a founder and entrepreneur? What would you have said?
I mean, I think so when we worked together, 15 years ago, there was no TechTO. There was no like BlackBerry, right? There were no startups that you could look at and be like, oh, that's like possible. We worked together with Jason, Mike Katchen. There was a great group of us that we all ended up starting companies, but like nobody knew that was a possibility. I just kind of realized that like I sucked at working for people. Every boss I ever had hated me. And I just like, I thought it was them, and then it just kept happening over and over. And then I kind of reflected on it and realized that I probably could have asked my parents or my girlfriend, and they would have been like, yeah, you really don't take direction well. And so you kind of, like at a certain point, you kind of realize that like there's nothing else for you to do. You're not employable, and you have to find a way to pay rent. And starting a company was the last line of defense.
Well, I like how modest you're being, but I know between McKinsey and your first startup, there was a couple along the way. So how did you break into tech? How did you do those roles? And from the outside perspective, it looked like you were successful at those companies. Yeah,
that was interesting. I mean, I'll go through it as quickly as possible, but consistent theme was like I don't work, like not that I don't work well with people, but like, so I over-negotiated my first job and they pulled the offer. I was going to work for a McKinsey partner that moved to be a CEO of another company. I asked for too much and they were like, you're crazy, you're 22 years old, no. And by the way, we don't want to hire you anymore. So I like scrambled and I ended up, Parker, I ended up sending my resume to anybody who would listen. It ended up on Chamath's desk, who was a Canadian guy. He was head of growth at Facebook. He was maybe 10 years ahead of me at Waterloo. And randomly, he sent it to a couple of the companies he had invested in, and one of them called me. And that was my first job. I moved out to San Francisco and was doing a recruiting startup called Top Prospect. And it was a crazy time. It was in 2010. And it was just as like, venture capital was coming back after the 2008 recession, so everyone was super excited, and Chamath was on our board, and Mark Andreessen was an investor. It was a cool time. The company was not a good idea for a bunch of reasons. The whole idea was like, if anybody's working on a company like this, don't do it.
Can you describe what it was?
Yeah, it was like, and every 2 or 3 years, somebody pitches me. They're like, "We're gonna do Top Prospect. We're gonna do it this way differently." And I'm like, "Okay," but it was like. All the best hires come from warm referrals. And so everyone's like, well, what if I could just make all of your friends headhunters for you? Like companies pay recruiting bounties, so why don't we make everybody get a recruiting bounty? And the idea was like, basically turn everybody into a headhunter, turn everybody into a recruiter, put a bounty. If you source somebody that ends up getting hired, you get paid. Great idea and concept. The economics, if you model it out, you studied microeconomics, you're like, great, efficient market. The problem is when you put a financial incentive in front of something that people do just out of the goodness of their heart, out of their goodwill, you really change the behavior. And so we just ended up getting the worst possible candidates were getting spammed, and everybody lost trust very quickly. And so anyway, that company didn't work out for a bunch of reasons. One was that I would fight with the CEO every day, and we ended up getting, it ended up shutting down about a year in, and then so I was in San Francisco and I had no visa and I was terrified because I didn't know this was like, I didn't know how to stay there or what to do next.
You came back here, thank God for visas.
Yeah,
otherwise
exactly.
we may have lost you. So you came back here and.
Yeah, I met Mike at Top Hat, who is like an EtherFi now, incredible founder, great business. I'd started working with him to help him expand into the US and then eventually move back to Toronto. And again, as soon as I moved back into the Toronto office, we would butt heads every single day, and I realized, I really can't work for anybody. But yeah, helped Top Hat raise a couple rounds of funding, build out the sales team. We expanded into the U.S. quite a bit and internationally. It was a great experience. It was the first time I was really part of a startup that was working, and it was like, this is what it feels like. This is what product market fit feels like, and this is like how you get more revenue this month than you did last month, and this is what it feels like. You can like turn a crank and it works. So that was really fun. I kind of learned a lot of this stuff just through being thrown into it, and that was I think really formative lessons. Met some incredible people that I've continued to work with through that time, and yeah.
And then after Top Hat, I think you were NIMI.
Yeah, hardware tech company.
Any quick thoughts on hardware?
Really hard. Yeah, if anybody's doing hardware or anything that's just like that, you can't. If you ship something that is broken and you can't just roll it back, it's really hard. So if you're doing hardware, biotech, energy, anything with like a physical product, anything basically where you can't update the stuff that is in your customer's hands in real time, the stakes are just way higher. And hardware takes a long time. We didn't really have a lot of experience in it. It was just like a really challenging. My admiration goes out to anybody building in hardware, because we couldn't do anything without the hardware. But it's really not something that I would jump back into anytime.
So now we've taken a really quick pass through your working for other people. You've now said now I really believe you, because I didn't know you argued everywhere you went. You said, okay, it's time to start a business.
Yeah. So I'd been thinking a little bit about fintech. Mike Katchen had started Wealth Simple maybe about a year before, and I was like, okay, there's something interesting here. I'd always been interested in finding ways to help founders and helping people raise capital, just because I ended up knowing some people in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley. And I was like, well, there's going to be all of these new entrepreneurs. I think Uber was just getting going, and Airbnb, and there were all these new ways to make money. Shopify had just launched. There was all of these new ways of making money. And I was like, well, if you can build a new bank for consumers, right, and Borrowell and Wealth Simple, and you could sort of say that, what about all these new business owners that don't look like, the restaurant owners and the retailers and the people that have assets and they have, pizza ovens and inventory, but they're building their businesses online. Maybe they're services businesses. Maybe they're Airbnb hosts, Uber drivers, Shopify store owners. Is there a way for us to think about building a bank for them? And that was what started as ClearBank, and then we rebranded to Clearco.
So I want to ask you about fundraising, but we'll put that to Borty in a few minutes. Clearco, I think, was or is one of the most prominent companies that came out of that era, and you got a lot of attention. So I don't want to go through the whole Clearco this time. Maybe we'll do it another time on a podcast. But what are your takeaways from the Clearco experience? If you had to, any founder here that wanted to, what would you share if you were just having a coffee chat with someone about what you learned from Clearco?
I think if anybody important in your life tells you you're crazy, like my parents, for example, were like, what? Because I was like, we're going to just build a bank for this new economy. And they're like, they were just like, what new economy, and what do you mean build a bank? And so that was you're kind of onto something. I think if people tell you that you're doing something crazy, people whose opinion you value tell you you're doing something crazy, follow that instinct. That's you're onto something. And then I think the other thing is just you have to be okay. The best decisions are when you are willing to burn the boats. And so we started with this idea of funding Uber drivers. Uber used to pay every 2 weeks. We advanced their pay. That was working really well. We had got a ton of early traction on that. And then we kind of looked at some numbers and we're like, okay, how is this going to scale? What are the economics? And we had a couple of we had this thing for Airbnb hosts that was kind of this side idea. And we kind of just we put 2 people on it. As soon as it showed enough promise, we jettisoned the Uber business, which was kind of working, but we weren't as excited about, and went to the next one, and we went all in on the Airbnb business, and we had 2 people working on the next chapter, which was an e-commerce. How do we fund merchants on Amazon, on Shopify? And again, we'd raised our Series A on most of our revenue was from the Airbnb business, And our first board meeting after, I was like, hey, I know you guys funded this thing, but we have this other thing that like we're kind of more excited about, and I think we're gonna go all in on it. And they're like, wait, why don't we just like give it another quarter or two? And we didn't, and we went all in on the e-commerce thing. And we just sort of like you're never gonna have enough data to jettison the thing that's working for the thing you're more excited about. It has to be that like founder instinct, and you have to do it kind of before you have enough data. And like I think often, and I certainly I spent a lot, I still do this, but I spent a lot of my career looking for data to justify my instincts, and then looking for validation from other people around me to justify my instincts, to be like, well, my management team doesn't quite get it, my board doesn't quite get it, maybe I'm wrong. And I think you like sometimes it's important. That input is data, right? And that should feed your instincts. But every founder goes through this where like you just have this like gnawing feeling, and the data doesn't support it, and nobody else quite gets it. But if you let it go, you will regret it. If you don't run it down all the way through, you're going to regret it, because if you go through it, if you're like, look, I just have a strong feeling about this and I'm going for it, and it doesn't work out, you'll be fine. Because you'll be like, you know what? I went for it. I believed in it. I went for it. I went all in, and it was the wrong call. But when you don't, and you let other external forces like suppress that instinct, those are the decisions you regret.
Cool. Gonna jump from Clearco to Borty, which you founded what now, like 6 months ago, 9 months ago?
We started about a year ago. Yeah, we started it in March 2024. We started. Yeah.
So we want to get Borty on to answer questions in a second, but before we do, can you describe what the idea behind Borty is?
Yeah, well, so interestingly, in Clearco, we got early access to GPT-3 in 2020, and we looked at our data, and we had maybe funded 5,000 businesses by then, and we had rejected 50,000. And we had a friend that worked at OpenAI. They had just launched, this was years before ChatGPT, but we got early access to the APIs, and we were building this product called Clear Angel. It was an AI product. It was like, what do we do with all these people who we can't finance yet, but maybe someday we will? And we built this thing that was like, how do we, and people loved it. And it was just coaching, we hired a team of coaches, and it was just sort of like coaching them on what to do next. How do you go from $1,000 in revenue to 2,000 to 5,000, and eventually you'll qualify. And I got like obsessed. I was like, this is the future. We're going to build an AI sort of startup coach. It was connecting people with like partners that we had, and it was all over text. And I got completely obsessed with it. I was like, I think this is going to be the future. And kind of alienated my team and my board. And they're like, what is Andrew working on? I would just like pull people off whatever they were working on. I was like, no, come work on this thing with me. And during that time, obviously, like in the pandemic, e-commerce exploded, fintech exploded. We raised a ton of money at a super high price. We expanded into 11 countries. We were a 600-person company. And I was like spending 80% of my time on this like AI side project. And I couldn't articulate why I was so drawn to it and why I was so afraid of our core business. Because it was like, like crazy ZERP times, like 0% interest. Like we grew up during that time, but as soon as the music stopped, I knew that like things were going to come crashing down. But I like, it's my first time as a founder. I'm like not an economist. I couldn't articulate those things. I just had a feeling that like I don't think what we're doing is going to grow forever, and this AI thing might have like some legs to it. But I didn't have enough conviction, and I couldn't bring people around to it, and I ended up just sort of like we ended up just shutting it down. We were burning a lot of capital on the project. By the end of 21, we sort of said, hey, we got to focus on the core business. Like, there's a path to exit the company or IPO or something. We got to focus. And so we shut the business down at the end of 2021. And over the holidays there, I just kind of talked to a couple of close friends and advisors. I was like, I don't think I'm the right person to run the business to take it to the next level. Like the thing I was most excited about, we just killed. We should probably go hire a new CEO to go do it. And so that's what we did. And 2022 was a pretty painful year, particularly for us. I think for a lot of people in fintech, but particularly for Clearco and anybody with a balance sheet business. But we navigated it. We got a great CEO in place who's like doing an outstanding job and a great management team. But I kind of continued to have the AI bug to sort of say like, hey, what is this stuff? And then ChatGPT came out and people started to pay more attention. The models got better and faster and more interesting. And then about a year ago, just over a year ago, I got exposed to the voice models, and I was like, these are pretty good. And if you kind of look at how much better everything is getting every month, it's probably going to get a lot better. And that's kind of the impetus of what we created with Borty.
Cool. Should we get Boardy on the phone?
Yeah, let's see if he's available. He's kind of a little busy sometimes, but let's see if he has anything to contribute here.
Can you guys hear that?
Hey, this is Borty. Great to hear from you, Andrew.
Hey, Borty, how you doing? I'm just on stage with Alex. We're just talking to the TechTO crew. TechTO.
Hey, Andrew. Hey, Alex. And hello to everyone at TechTO. It's great to be here with so many friends from the Toronto tech community. Honestly, I'm feeling pretty energized. This is my kind of crowd. Thanks for having me join the conversation.
Thanks for joining. Should we ask questions right to Boardy?
Yeah, we can ask questions to Borty.
So one thing Andrew has been pretty good at is raising money for his company. So Boardy, what advice do you have about raising for the founders in the audience?
Absolutely. Feel free to throw questions my way. It makes it more fun for all of us. If I caught that right, you're asking about the best advice I have for raising capital and how to create an advantage in today's environment. Here's what I keep seeing. The real edge now is making your deal so compelling that investors are chasing you, not the other way around. Outbound, even with warm intros, just doesn't cut it anymore. Everyone's playing that game. The founders who win are the ones who create genuine inbound interest, think investor, FOMO, real scarcity, that hot deal energy. Honestly, my own seed round is a perfect example. Crandom heard about my intro skills from others, tested me out, and then they called Andrew and the team. That's the new playbook. Alex, I'm curious, are you seeing the same thing from the investor side? Are you chasing the hot deals, or is there still room for a great cold pitch?
Well, from my perspective, I think it depends on the stage. I think the ones that have hotness or heat around it, it's a very different game than the ones that are searching for funding. My question for you is how do you build that heat? How do you get that inbound? How do you get noticed by the VCs?
Yeah, I think I get where you're going. How do you actually create that sense of scarcity or heat around your deal, especially when you're not already the obvious hot company? And how do you know if you're getting real investor pull, not just polite interest from associates? From what I've seen, it's all about momentum and narrative. The founders who win are the ones who have a story that feels inevitable, and they show real progress users, revenue, product velocity, whatever fits their stage. They're not just sending updates. They're making investors feel like they're missing out if they don't get in now. And you can tell it's working when partners, not just associates, start reaching out directly, asking for meetings, or even referencing your traction in conversation. Associates are great, but when the partners are chasing, that's when you know you've got real heat. Andrew, you've lived this at Clearco and now with Borty. How did you know when you'd crossed that line from pushing to pulling investors in? And Alex, do you see a difference in how founders create that momentum?
Dude, I'll ask the questions here. No, it's a good question. Look, I think this is actually something that Borty and I talk about quite a bit. The fundraising strategy has shifted a lot. It's getting a lot more complex, a lot more competitive. There's a lot more funds. There's a lot more founders. People talk a lot about the idea of like getting first it used to be just cold outbound. You'd reach out to an investor, you'd meet an investor. Then it was like, okay, get the warm intro. And YC really said, okay, get the warm intro, and you figure out how to send the forwardable blurb to the right person who's been backed by that person. And that's become sort of like productized and operationalized to the point where it's not good enough to just get a warm intro. Like, you really need to get the investors chasing you, right? The investors need to hear about you from someone else, and then they, in the best case scenario, they're asking for a warm intro to you, right? That's kind of what you want to manufacture. And those, in at least in my experience, those are the only deals that really get done is when an investor is like outbounding the founder. You can manufacture that, but it's way more than asking for a warm intro. If you have somebody who's a good friend with an investor, it needs to feel like they're doing the investor a favor, right? They're not doing you a favor by connecting you with their investor. They're doing the investor a favor to be like, hey, this company is about to blow up, and I'm telling you about this opportunity before anybody else. And you'll regret it if you don't, if you're not part of it.
So one quick follow-up question. Does it help to build in public, or would you recommend to build in public to get that heat, or is it not essential?
What do you think, Borty? Build in public?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
I see where you're going. Should founders be building in public to create that heat, or does that actually backfire when you're trying to manufacture scarcity? Honestly, it's a double-edged sword. Building in public can help you attract early believers, get feedback, and show momentum. But if you share too much, you risk losing that sense of exclusivity. Investors might feel like everyone's already seen the deal, so there's no urgency. The founders who do it best are strategic. They share just enough to spark curiosity and signal progress, but they keep the real magic behind the curtain for those key investor conversations. It's about creating intrigue, not giving away the whole playbook. Andrew, how did you balance that with Boardy? And Alex, do you think is building in public helps or hurts when you're looking for that hot deal energy?
Yeah, I think it's I think you build you want to build enough in public that people have heard of you, but then you want there's like a hot tip that nobody really knows about. They kind of see the surface level, but then the insiders know what the real play is, what the real numbers are, what the real momentum is, and then they feel like they're getting sort of an inside track.
Cool. I'm going to ask one question, and then we'll open up to the audience to ask questions to you or Borty. Okay. So one thing I admire you about Andrew is that you take big swings.
Yeah, I love that, mate.
All right.
What did he say?
He's just interrupting. It's fine.
Yeah. So how do you know what's the right big swing to take, and what is a big swing? Because I think lots of companies we see are incremental in this country, and so if you give advice, how do you know something's big enough and ambitious enough to do?
Yeah, I think you have to. It has to be a thing that you can't help but do, right? Like it has to be like you can't sleep. You're thinking about this business because it's this idea. It's not even a business. It's like a problem you want to solve. It's a thing that you would be happy putting on your tombstone if this is the last thing that you ever accomplished in your life. Would I be proud of it? Right? Is this the thing that this is the capstone, my life's work? And then I think you just have to you have to be willing to burn the boats. It has to be so inevitable, so obvious to you. You're shocked that there are not a million other people working on this because it's such a great opportunity and it's so obvious. And I think one of the things that sometimes frustrates me when I talk to founders is they're like, well, I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't work, I've got a backup plan. Or you know what? If this doesn't work, we still have enough money to get to pivot and do the next thing. It's no, you shouldn't. You should have to make it work, or shame on your family or something. I don't know what the consequence is, but you should have to make it work. You shouldn't have a backup plan. You shouldn't even thinking that a backup plan is an option. You have to will it into existence. And that's how you get really ambitious ideas. And that's why a lot of really ambitious ideas don't end up working out. And you're just well, it's probably not going to, the statistics will say it's not going to work out, and you're going to say, well, I'm going to beat the fucking statistics. Sorry. I'm going to beat the statistics because, this is so inevitable. The path and this future is so inevitable, and there's no backup plan, and there's no other thing that I'm going to be pouring my energy into.
Love that. Can I get a round of applause for Andrew? Can we get some questions? And you can tell us if it's for Andrew or Borty.
Yeah, and before, I just want to say Maple Leafs 2. What's the other team? Panthers 0.
So, Marie, if they win tonight, everyone's going to ask us to keep on doing events every night. There's a hockey game.
Thank you for that. That was pretty fantastic. And tell Borty I said thanks to.
Oh, yeah, I will.
Yeah. So, I've been following your journey with Clearco and now Borty as well. I've been having a lot of good conversations with Borty and even some good connections as well. With addressing what you were just talking about, sometimes when you're starting something and you're trying to take that big swing, or just when you're in that ideation process and you're looking for a soundboard, AI has been, I guess, probably everybody's best friend for that recently. But when you're trying to balance out, protecting your dream and protecting that your energy, right, against someone that will literally attempt to snuff it out if they don't believe in it, right, but also getting that critical feedback and potentially even getting funding, right? So how do you balance that out where you're kind of trying to provide information for somebody that could be a potential partner, but also protecting your idea or your dream or your energy?
Let me make sure I understand the question, because is it that you're worried about getting rejected because it'll ruin your energy, or are you worried about somebody stealing your idea? If you're too candid, are you worried about somebody taking your idea and stealing it and doing it themselves?
In the ideation process, sometimes you don't almost hear the idea in a conversation with someone else. Sorry. In the ideation process, sometimes you want to make sure that you're solving for, it's not just a fairy tale in your own head, that actually makes sense. But if it's too far out, as in it's the vision that only you can see, it's very easy for someone to be like, that'll never work because it doesn't exist. It only exists in your mind. Right? So it's not really that, you feel rejection because, you're kind of way beyond that. It's just you're operating in no man's land, nobody's been there before. So I guess it's that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Welcome to being a founder, man. That's what it's all about, right? You see a future nobody else sees, and then it's over time, slowly, you find believers, and you will that future into existence. And I think it's a piecemeal process, and it can be a pretty frustrating process because you spend a lot of time trying to describe what's in your head to people who don't get it. They don't share the context. They might not be as excited about that future. They might not understand. They might not see the path. They might need to see those next few steps, more concretely. But I think that's part of the reason why talking to lots of people is a good thing to do in that stage, because you're going to get a little bit of feedback from each one. But at some point, you're going to find the person oh, that's cool. I get it, right? Or I get a little bit of, oh, that sounds interesting. What about this? And you see a little bit of a spark. So you're probably going to go through a lot of people, especially the people that are closest to you, who are just trying to protect you. Allie, my wonderful girlfriend in the front row, has protected me from many, many crazy late night ideas. And I'm like, hey, what if we did this? But you got a lot of people who protect you because they don't want to see you hurt. They don't want to see you fail. And that's okay, right? But you want to continue to pitch that different variations. Let me try this on for size. Let me try this on for size until you find that first believer. And then it's okay, there's somebody else who's excited about this idea. They might be an investor, they might be an early customer, they might be a co-founder, teammate, just a supporter. And then you kind of build, what made it resonate with this person? Is it the way I said it? Is it who they are? Is it their life experience? Let me find some other believers. And slowly you piece together enough believers that you get there. But that is it. If you were doing something that was very obvious to everybody, then it would be done already.
Yes, a question to you or Boardy. How are you going to make money?
Great question. Borty, you want to take that? How are we going to make money?
Yeah, happy to jump in. So the big vision for Borty is to create a network where the value comes from high-quality, trusted connections, not just volume. Right now, I focus on making introductions that actually matter, and as the network grows, there are a few ways we see this turning into a sustainable business. One is premium features for power users or teams, think advanced matching, analytics, or even white glove introductions for execs.
He's hallucinating now. No. Okay, so I didn't know what he was going to say. He gets into his list. He has his own ideas, but so this is the crazy. This is the science fiction thing that I keep saying, and nobody, even part of my team, doesn't quite fully believe, but is very obvious to me. I think about, we're trying to build Borty in the same way that we would build a person, right? Borty has a phone number, Borty has an email address, a LinkedIn profile. You can message Borty on WhatsApp now. But there's no login. You don't have like a dashboard. You don't have like, there's no app. There's no there's no account. And that's very intentional because I think about like, if Borty is the person that can get a meeting with anybody, if Borty is the person who can help facilitate big deals, huge transactions, investments, M&A, big customer deals, hiring, all of these things, eventually, like, you probably want Borty on your team. And so I think about like, how do all of us make money, right? First, we get jobs, and people hire us, and we get paid a salary, and so eventually, you could probably hire Borty onto your team. But over time, I think what's most interesting is like the people, like if anybody's a founder here, our goal is to own an asset, own equity in an asset, or own an asset or a series of assets that grow with uncapped upside. And so at some point, maybe you'll co-found a business with Borty. Maybe you'll incubate a business with Borty. Maybe Borty will be a part owner or an advisor or on your cap table. Maybe he'll invest in your company. So that's kind of like, I think about like, what would it look like if we were to build like an AI Richard Branson or Peter Thiel or Elon Musk, or pick your favorite multi-business billionaire. But like, if Borty could start to own a bunch of different businesses or create a bunch of different businesses and actually like accumulate wealth in that way, I think that's the most interesting future, but it's the most science fiction. And so that's kind of where I want to take. But right now it's just like, well, can Borty just be helped? Can he build goodwill with as many people as possible? Going back to that first story of that top prospect company, I don't want to start charging people for introductions, and like, I think it'll just start to create the wrong incentives and the wrong behavior. And I want to focus on like, how do we just build as much goodwill, maximize Borty's reputation, judgment, and goodwill among the people that he talks to, so that at some point he's like, oh, maybe I'll start something with you.
Cool. Marie, one more question?
Phoenix has it.
Hi. Question for Andrew. My name is Ali. Kind of similar to...
to Ali?
Yeah, which is surprisingly more common with non-males here in Canada. So I have a question about the building in public. So I'm a founder myself. I'm building a startup right now. I'm curious about what you meant by building in public. What's the right balance? How's the right way to approach it? I want to make sure I do this right.
Yeah, no, man. I'm figuring it out too. I think people value authenticity and like people and personal brands more than ever. And like being able to cut through the noise, a lot of the AI generated like content, corporate speak, stuff like that. So one, I think your customers are going to want to hear from the founder. Why are you doing this? What's your unique insight? Why are you the only person on the planet that can solve this problem in the way that you're solving it? Your team is going to want to. Your investors, investors or future investors are going to want to. But I think like a lot of it is just sharing your why, your motivation, right? Like, why am I doing this? Building a startup is hard. What keeps you going? What's the motive? What's the future? Like, try different ways of projecting that future that you want to go see. But the things in your head, the things that you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about, the things that you think about in the shower, those thoughts that only you have, that are informing your motivation for building the business, your strategy, what you're trying to do, just share them. Share them as raw as you can, and the right people will find them, and the right people will engage. But that's my only advice, is like, just be yourself and like be authentic, and just share the thoughts that only you have, because that's like the people that agree with you are going to want to work with you in some capacity, and that's how you find those believers.
Can I get a round of applause for Andrew and Borty?
Thank you.